Good afternoon, everyone. Tractor Man 44 here. It's been a while since I had this old cow here running, close to 3 years, 2.5 years at least. It's an Oliver 88. Obviously, you can see I got her all covered up for the duration anyway. Keep the water out of the carburetor and out of the generator. You know, just kind of keep the snow and the elements out of the engine, because I don't have sheds big enough to put all of them in because it's filled with too much other stuff. I'm airing up the tire here. This big old donut here has got a slow leak in it, and so over 6-8 month period it goes flat. So I got the 80-gallon tank in the back of the truck, put a little air pressure and tire, getting it ready to go. And I don't know if we'll get around to working on the old motor, trying to get her fired up. But if the gas is not too bad a shape, it ought to fire up pretty easy. Probably have to slip the battery in it, you know. Might have to look, see if there's any bugs in the points or something like that. We're gonna get ready to fire this old tractor up so we can power the sawmill. If you want, I'll show you a little bit of that old sawmill. It ain't much to look at, but it's fun. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that old Oliver 88 right now. I don't have it uncovered. Looks like rain's moving in this afternoon, so I'm not even going to mess with trying to get it fired up. So I'll highlight that one on a separate video. But we do have time to take a look at this old Belsaw. And what this is an A14. The newer version of this is an M14. This thing essentially has a 28-foot bed, meaning in theory you can run a 14-foot log on it, but in actuality that's not entirely true. But you can see it connects right off the power takeoff shaft to the back of that tractor, so it's made to be powered at 540 RPM on the arbor, and then it goes through a series of reductions inside there. And then you've got your engagement to make the track roll forward and backwards. But the blade at full RPM on the tractor will turn 540 RPM, so that's the rotation of the blade, and that's what it's supposed to be hammered for. This thing came standard with a little 40-inch standard blade, not an inserted tooth blade. This happens to be a 48-inch. The original one that came on this when I brought it home had a 50-inch, but this thing had set in the woods for 30-35 years and actually sunk down into the dirt to where the bottom 20% of the blade was just rotted so badly that it wasn't safe to put new inserted teeth in, because they're just going to fly out. They're not going to hold in place. But and I'll tell you about the old boy I got this from in a minute. But at any rate, you can see here we got the two levers. This guy here engages, just the drive mechanism that allows you to index the carriage forward and backwards. And then the next lever over there, just out of my reach, that's the forward and the reverse lever. And all that does is way on the other side over there. If you see that idler pulley move back and forth, see how it goes up and back? Okay, well, that's how you go forward and backwards. And then, of course, it's got a drum right there in the center. You see the drum that the cable is wrapped around. That's what actually pulls the carriage back and forth. So take a look at the carriage. The carriage is this yellow thing right here. It's just a simple carriage with 6 wheels on it. It's got a set of head blocks. Head blocks are the things that the log rolls up against. And it's got a set of dogs and then a clamping mechanism for the dogs. This is nothing like the original. The original were so flimsy and so cheap that they were just bending. Anytime I would index the log into the blade, those little things were only 1/4 inch thick, and they would just peel backwards, and the log would just slide right to the rear of the carriage. Well, that was no good. So it took me no time at all to come up with these heavier dogs. I took some 3/4 inch steel plate, and then used a plasma cutter and cut these out, shaped them, put them on the milling machine, and put the angles and trued them all up. Made them to where they would be substantial enough to where they're not going to do any bending or whatever, or slipping out of the log whenever it hits the blade. So what I did, I bought flat gear material. Like, can you see the flat gear right here? I bought flat gear material and then some drive gears, and then notched the back side of the drive gears off to where I would have a slide, and then I countersunk some grade 8 machine heads through the back side of the head blocks, and then drilled and tapped and then bolted these things all together. And this gives me a very, very snug way of attaching the dogs into the log. I can raise the handle. It's a little awkward now because everything's rusty. I sprayed WD on it, but I raise the handle up to right here, and you can slide it up and down. You set it down into your log, and then you index it down with that gear, and that'll lock the dog into the log. Well, you do that on all 3 of them, and that's how you latch it into place. Now you can slide this all the way out really, really, really far, or you can slide it all the way up close, really, really close like that. So, like I said, that's a change that I made to it. A much needed change, because the original was just horrible. Another thing that I did too, I had another carriage given to me by an old timer, and off of that extra carriage I was able to get another knee. The knee is this part right here, and then another head block. And so I put that third that third head block on the carriage. And I'll tell you what that does. Now this carriage is 72 inches long, and a lot of times what you'll do, you'll actually saw lumber and leave it live edged, and then you'll stack a stack of live edge lumber, and then you'll stack it back up, put it on the carriage, and then edge it with the saw itself. When you have 6-foot carriage with no support in the middle, and you're sawing the live edges off of 2 or 3 1-inch boards, what happens, it starts giving in the middle, and it starts off a waving and a jumping, and that's not real good. They get loose, they run a little crooked into your saw arbor, and that kind of messes things up. So I put that third head block in the middle to minimize that. And the other thing that it does is it cut me from a minimum length log of 72 inches down to where I can cut something as short as 36 inch, which will allow you to salvage a lot more material. A lot of times you get some kind of rare wood, or some rare wood around here like chestnut or something like that, and it's always, short pieces, and you can get some good material out of some, 36, 38, 40-inch material, as well as branches. You can get some walnut logs. You can get some other logs that have some branches that have sections long enough to get some good material if you can saw them that short. Well, putting that third head block allows me to saw it down to 36 inches, and that's very, very, very beneficial. Now, as far as the set works are concerned, let me move you up closer and I'll show you how that functions. Before we go much farther, now let me stress the point that I'm not, there's many things that I am not, and one of the things especially I'm not is a sawyer. Even though I was around a sawmill all the time whenever I was a kid, from the time I was able to walk all the way up until I went in the Marine Corps, I am not a sawyer. I was never the head sawyer. My brother, my uncle, they were always that. I was always the muscle behind the scenes, rolling logs and all that kind of stuff, and carrying slabs and stuff like that. I never really got to be the head guy that did all the figuring. So I'm learning. So take most of what I say with a grain of salt, simply because, I know enough to be dangerous, but there are plenty of videos out there on YouTube of guys that are professional that know one heck of a lot more than I do about sawing. The mechanism, I think, that pulls that indexes your log into and out of your saw arbor is called the set works. Now this is a real light duty set works. The whole machine is actually a light duty machine. It was made specifically for for farmers. It's a lightweight, light-duty machine. They could saw small logs, they could make cedar siding, they could make all kinds of things. They could make lumber for building hog pens, fencing, everything like that. Small buildings, outbuildings, woodsheds, anything of that nature. And that's what it was designed for. A very small, very light-duty, very economical tool specifically for farmers. All farmers had tractors. All tractors have power takeoffs. Most of them have power takeoffs. So it was designed with the farmers in mind. So it's not meant to saw 36-inch live oak or anything like that. It's just not made. This thing is really, really good on red cedar, on walnuts, cherries, all your softwoods. It's very, very, very good. But at any rate, on your set works, you got a lever here that's forward and reverse. But you just index it forward. And once you make your saws, you need to pull it backwards to put a bigger log on, or to roll your log, square it off and make a cant out of the round log. So you flip that the other direction, and then you push, and that rolls backwards. You roll your log, do whatever you need to do to get it squared up, latch your dogs back down again, index it forward, index it forward to where you're ready to make a pass through the blade, and go for it. Take it right on through the blade. Now I've got this set up, I've adjusted it to where every full pass like this is 1 1/8 inches. Every time I pull this is 1 1/8 inches. That way you can plane a 1/16 off of each side, and you can come up with a 1-inch clean full dimension lumber. Now on that carriage, all there is off of that drum is a cable that goes from one end of the rig to the other, and you can see nothing more than a pulley down here. And on the opposing end, roughly 32 feet away, even though it's a 28-foot carriage, roughly 32 feet away on the other end is the other pulley. The cables run around that and pull it this way and pull it that way when you index your lever forward and reverse. Back under here, I don't know that you can see very well, but that aluminum right there, that aluminum is the saw guide. And if you see, there's set screws in the very top on either side of the blade, and you can see chunks of wood. I believe that's pieces of hickory, and you round those up on your lathe and you stick those in there, and then you adjust them in, and you give just a little bit of support to that blade as right after it passes through the lumber. Tell you what I did. I dug out 32 seconds of old footage of the very first run when I got this thing together. guys, that's a overview of this 40s or maybe even early 50s Model A14 Foley Belsaw Sawmill. You know, we were having shirt sleeve weather here up just a couple minutes ago, and hot dang, it clouded up, the wind blew in, got a little chilly, had to go grab my jacket. By the time I get back out here, it done blew over a little bit. But there's tornado warnings for about 45-50 miles south of here anyway, so we might get a little weather after a while, I don't know. But anyway, back to the story. I'll probably repeat myself just a little bit, but at any rate, this is just an old Belsaw sawmill made specifically for, you know, small-time operators or for farmers primarily, because like I said, almost all farmers had tractors with power takeoffs, and that's what they could drive this with, of course. And of course, there were other innovative ways of driving these things off the rear end of cars and trucks and all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to get around to getting her fired up today. Don't have enough time. I just had a little bit of a window of opportunity, so to speak, for you know, kind of getting some debris out from around it, some blown in leaves and things like that, you know, because it has been a good 2.5 years since I've even had this thing fired up, the old Oliver too. And I'll do a video on that Oliver, a cold start on that guy. God only knows when I have to do that thing. Last time I got her fired up, I had an ant that had crawled in between the points and it smashed right together on the contact points, and had to clean that all out. Ant guts, you know what I mean? But anyway, I had that thing fired up and running. It runs pretty smooth. It's not a bad running low tractor. Pulls this mill fairly well. I'll get around to that one of these days. I still have quite a few other projects on my plate, some things I got to get taken care of, but this just looked like a nice day to at least do an overview of this and kind of test the water, so to speak, see if there's any interest on this old sawmill, and some of the modifications I had to make and perform on it to make it work halfway as decent, or at least as decently as it does, because it had been neglected and left laying in the woods for so many years. But you know, it still does not saw really good. I need new bits and shanks in that blade. I need to have that blade hammered for 540 RPM, or bite the bullet and get me a replacement blade. But I kind of hesitated spending $2,500 on a blade, so I'm just gonna keep muddling with it the way I do, and probably go ahead and sell this one, and then save my money for putting my big mill together. I've got a much larger mill. It's got a 60-inch diameter circular. It's a circular mill, and it's got, I think, 48-foot carriage. You can run some big stuff with that, and it's powered by a 371 Detroit 2-stroke diesel power plant. And that's going to be an interesting build there. That's probably going to stretch out over a year and a half, the way my projects go. Man, I just ain't got time to dedicate to one, just dig in and just get it done, you know. But, you know, that's probably my fault. I tell you what, I beat this one here to death, like they say on the radio, you know. So I ain't got much else to say. Don't know a whole lot about them, really. I am not a sawyer by any stretch of the imagination. But you know what? My dad had a very unique way of looking at things. He told me one time, he said, boy, he said, you know, you're not slow at anything you do. I thought that's a pretty good compliment coming from the old man. He said, you know, and you're not fast at anything you do either. Well, that's all right. But he said, you know what? He said, boy, you're half-assed at everything you do. Now, I didn't quite know how to take that, and y'all can take it whichever way y'all want. But that's my old man for you. But at any rate, I tell you what, for now, this Tractor Man 44, and I am out of here.